Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, we are almost streaming. And we're good to go.
Welcome in, everyone. Thank you for being here this evening on June 26th for the PCEF Committee meeting. Next slide, please. We are grateful for virtual participation. So here are the guidelines for virtual participation. The chat box will be open for introductions and for noting public comment interest. All other times, host-only chats for PCEF staff. Please raise your hand electronically to be used by the committee and presenters only. Video on for the committee, please. Microphone, please make sure it's muted. This meeting is being recorded per City of Portland and Oregon state law, and captioning this meeting is being captioned, and you can use settings and show subtitles. This is a public meeting open to the public. The public is invited to comment at around 6:05, and then will be a break at 7 o'clock. And there will be no online discussion available during the break. So we would like to go to the next slide, please. Our agenda this evening, we'll do welcomes and introductions, public comment. Then we'll approve the meeting minutes for April and May. Those are action items, and then we'll have program updates, annual CIP update process and timeline review. Take a quick break, then evaluation subcommittee appointment and co-chair appointment, and then working agreement update. And then we hope to close the meeting around 7:30 or so. Next slide, please. All right, introductions. I would love to have the committee introduce itself. I'm going to start off and ask Robin Wang to introduce yourself, and then popcorn over to the next person. Pretty please.
Good evening, Robin Wang, committee member, he, him, and Meg, you're next on my screen.
Hey, you all, Meg, she, her, committee member and co-chair, and I will pass to Tracy.
Good evening, everyone. Tracy Scott, committee member, she, her pronouns. I'm going to send it over to Ron, please.
Thanks, Tracy. Happy Thursday, everyone. Ryan Fiestantino, Vittoro, committee member, he, him pronouns, and I will kick it over to D'Angelo.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Feels like it's been such a long time since we've been together, but D'Angelo Moaning, committee member, happy to be here. Happy summer, everybody. I'll pass it over to Faith. I believe you're next on my list.
Hey, D'Angelo, and thanks for that. It does feel like it's been a long time. Faith Graham, committee member, she, her pronouns. Delighted to be with you all. I think that's all the committee members that I'm seeing. So do you want me to pass it to Sam?
Please.
Sam, you're up.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see you all. I don't know if we're third Thursday of the month, but this one fell this way. So either way, it's wonderful to see you all. And Sam Barroso, he, him pronouns, program manager for the PCEF team.
Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome in, everyone. Christine Moses, she, her pronouns. I am your facilitator. So thank you, Rachel. Next slide, please. Centering. I'm going to ask us to just take a couple of minutes to center ourselves. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes or to gaze softly down. Or you may want to look out the window, whatever you prefer. I invite you to feel your feet firmly planted on the floor. And feel the back of your legs on your chair. And feel your chair firmly holding your back. You are grounded. And you get to let go of everything else that came before this moment. Just breathe. And I invite you to open your eyes slowly. Take a big stretch up. Ugh. Yes. Welcome in, everyone. Hey. Next slide, please. Okay, public comment. I would love to invite public comment, and I see Darlene's hand right up there. Darlene, I invite you to give us your public comment. You have up to 3 minutes and go right ahead. So welcome in.
Thank you. I am Darlene Sherman. I live in Southeast Portland and a climate advocate. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I really want to thank all of you for your commitment to PCEF and its projects and really benefiting our community and greenhouse gas reductions. And I'd like to urge you and staff to look at ways that you can publicize what PCEF is doing. What I found during the city budget efforts with limited funding available, there were efforts, talk from the public and sometimes from Portland councilors about rating PCEF in order to meet budget shortfalls. And I think some of it is that people don't know what benefits that PCEF is really doing for the community. What I find for myself is that I have followed PCEF and I know what kind of projects are funded, but it's hard to get updates of what the status is of particular projects. Like I'd like to know what's happening with community solar, and I look on the website and I can't find out what projects are funded or what the status is of any of those. I'm interested in what's going, really have seen the publicity both through the website for people who are sort of paying attention, but also in general about the Portland cooling. And I think that kind of awareness for the community is really important and should be able to do that with some of the other projects that PCEF is funding by partnering with some of the grant recipients. So I'd really like to encourage you to do that. I know you got a lot on your plate, but I do think that's an important component for keeping PCEF alive and reduce the threats, and just that people understand the community benefits and the climate benefits of what you do. So thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Darlene. Pleasure to have you here. Welcome in, Babs.
Hey, hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, thanks to my colleague, Darlene, I could just say ditto, 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 ditto to everything she just put forth. I am so grateful that she and I are in a regular contact. Just a sidebar, I'm wondering if it seems like a really long time since this group has met because of the endless marathon city council meetings that have happened in the last month. So thank you for all your continued work. And again, the questions I had echo everything Darlene just said. And we just keep moving forward, doing what we can. As you know, I've been following PCEF for over 2 years now, maybe longer. And it seems to me there are some climate-friendly city council members at this point, but there's also just so much to navigate, given that this is a huge learning curve for all of us and for the 12 of them and Mayor Keith. So thank you all. Keep up the good work. Bye-bye. Or I'll continue to watch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Babs. Anyone else interested in giving public comment? All right. Well, thank you so very much. Meg.
Yeah, hi. At the PCEF Committee, we try to have a practice of responding to public comments. That's why I raised my hand as co-chair. So thanks, Darlene and Babs, and other folks who've commented in the past. I thank you for raising that issue, because actually it's one that's come up with committee members recently too. And I know Sam is queued up to say a few things about this exact issue of communicating our success stories better to the public, to elected officials, to our champions, just to the community at large. So I'm popping in the chat. I think you all can see it, or if not, somebody can repost a couple places that I'm aware of where PCEF is promoting stories of its success, and they're a little bit duplicative. Like, one is just the PCEF website where there's a climate justice story page. And then if you're on LinkedIn, Portland Bureau of Planning and Sustainability sometimes posts PCEF specific things. And so that's a place that even I, as a committee member, look to keep up with when someone asks me, like, what's a cool PCEF story to tell them about, if like that's a good place to go besides the ones I am more familiar with. And I generally know a little bit more about the tree planting and regenerative ag ones. But I agree we could be doing more, and I think we'll be talking more about that to tell folks about the success stories. And I will note in the chat, the last link is a Flickr album, and it's about a tour I got to go on for Portland with urban forestry to see projects, particularly tree planting and maintenance projects funded by PCEF. So I think Sam has a moment later in the agenda where I'll just say a little bit more about that. But that is also on those two other links. They posted, PCEF comm staff posted a little recap of that tree tour also. So I guess, yeah, thanks for the comment. And I think it's a good time for us committee to be engaged with staff about that too. One last comment from me, as I've been meeting, as Ranfeast and I have been meeting with the 12 counselors and the mayor over the last 6 months, definitely a common question by all of them is like, well, tell us about like some of the success stories on the ground. Where can I go see PCEF in action? That's a common question we get from electeds also. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Meg. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Next slide. Okay, meeting minutes action item. I would like to ask for someone to move that we accept the meeting minutes from April, May 7th, and May 15th.
Dr. Moses, I would like to move that we accept the meeting minutes that are listed here, May 17th, 7th, and 15th of 2025.
Thank you so much. May I have a second?
This is Deanne. Oh, perfect.
Who was that? Very good. Faith, all in favor? Thank you. I see everyone's hands up. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Next slide, please. All right, program updates. This is teed up for you, Sam.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. And thank you to the commenters. So I'm just going to go through a few things, because while I feel like it seems like it's been a while, maybe because we met a couple of times and had a rapid succession of meetings in May, we've been really busy in that span of time. So I'll just start with our community grants, which is, as you all know, that is the core of what we do. That is our marquee program. It is an annual program. And so our latest round, our 2025 community grant cycle, which we're now calling them by the year the cycle originated. So there's 2025 community grant cycle closed in May, end of May, with a total funding availability for that round of about 70 million. We received a total of about 215 applications, which is broken out roughly in between about 164 implementation grants, about 52 planning grants. So a lot of planning grants, and that's been on par with prior years, requesting about a total combined of about a little bit over 260 million. So we're currently moving through that process and expect to get to the recommendations here later this fall. But it is busy in that we have a bigger team to work through the process. So we're excited in terms of just even seeing how the split of the review is shaping out in the team. But right now we're just working through getting through the basic parts of the eligibility review and the technical review, and engaging in that as we ask questions of folks that have applied. So that's going to take the better part of the remainder of the year for us to work through, but it's good engaging a good chunk of our team. And then just Cooling Portland, as you know, folks know, this was sort of our first of like strategic programs before we had strategic programs. So it's one of the first where we administer this in partnership with Earth Advantage, and just hit a key goal here of hitting our initial goal of 15,000 units. When we established the program, the goal was to get 15,000 units distributed, installed across Portland. We hit that goal 18 months ahead of schedule. And have since increased that goal from 15,000 to 25,000 units. So the next couple of years are going to be busy, and then I expect that we'll probably be, sunsetting the program or discussing what it looks like in the next CIP as we gear up to that process. And so then I'm going to just give you now just a handful of updates around our strategic programs and where they're at, since most of the better part of the past year has been focused on standing up strategic programs. And so first, just, I'm going to start with a lot of our clean energy strategic programs. That's actually, I think, the bulk of my updates here. Our clean energy and unregulated multifamily housing program. This is called Strategic Program 2 in the Common Investment Plan. We're nearly at the end of our RFP review process, and with that, hope to make a contract award decision soon. And I believe, Robin, you're on the panel. So once awarded, we expect to get underway under the contracting process. So just, once we get awarded, doesn't mean the program is live. Then we get into contracting, and once we get into contracting, sometimes we begin some of the program development phase at the same time. But once we get into contracting, then we get into the program development phase, and then we move into implementation. So that can take a good chunk of time as we get there, but that's an important one, in that this is a program we're excited about, in no small part because this is an area of work that, as a region, as a city, we really just barely scratched the surface on. Our strategic program 3 focused on clean energy and single family homes. This is our largest program, a $140 million program. Now, we've long since now awarded that grant or contract. We've executed that contract with our partners at Evergreen Consulting, who've been doing a wonderful job of building out the program. And so that program specifically is going to be doing a soft launch in August, in a couple of months here, or a month and some change here, with the aim of enrolling 4 contractors and retrofitting 10 homes to really work out the kinks in the process, the enrollment, all the steps in the process. So that's going to roll out here with a soft launch in August before we work through that, and then more broadly roll out the program. Our next up in the sequence is our clean energy in small commercial buildings program. That's strategic program 4. That is going to be starting on Monday of next week, launching an introductory phase, is what they're calling it. And so what's going to happen there is that'll launch the website and the application, and we'll begin conducting outreach to target businesses, including some of those that participate in some of the program's focus groups. And so that'll similarly be used to just work out the kinks in the application and the process flow across that program, and that'll be followed with a wider rollout later on. And then, keeping the theme on our clean energy program, strategic program 25, which has been focused on affordable housing and preservation. So really clean energy improvements, focused on preserving affordable housing. So this is a program that was approved last year as part of the amendment to the Climate Investment Plan. We're administering this with the Portland Housing Bureau, who rolled out a notice of funding availability earlier this year. And they now have a list of 9 recommended projects for the overall funding, 4 of those of which are going to be receiving PCEF funds, totaling about $12.5 million, which will be invested in about 326 units that will support preserving and making clean energy improvements in. And so right now we're just in the process of notifying the candidates, and hopefully soon here we'll be able to make a public announcement on the recipients of those funds. And then just moving further down the list here, our first grants from our Collaborating for Climate Action grant opportunity are just beginning to be routed within the city in our process to become executed. And so actually, for one of the commenters, we're excited because one of those do involve a large community solar project And so that's with Bonneville Environmental Foundation. So hopefully we'll start seeing that. And this is the difference between projects we own and administer and we get to shine a light on versus those that are our grant funds. But we expect there to be a lot of positive excitement and energy as that program gets underway and moving. And then this is just to tee folks up. Wendy Serrano and our engagement team is now starting to work on building out an 82nd Avenue tour. So we've just been really thinking about how do we start shining a spotlight and thinking about that this may be one of our first geographic focuses. It was within the climate investment plan. And so between several of the grant investments and grant awards we've made, as well as some of the strategic programs focused on 82nd Avenue, we're working on doing a tour later this fall in September and organizing that to showcase some of the projects and ideally using the 72 bus to make our way around the corridor and get to showcase just the different projects and diversity projects we have focused on that corridor. And so that's just another way in which we're now starting to think about how do we give folks an avenue to engage with our projects in a particular geography. So that's just a little bit that I wanted to share here. We're going to try to figure out how do we obviously get these more regular. And I know that, I know I had a chance to connect with Megan just before this. And, one thing that we've been doing, I want to acknowledge for the group is we've now been aggregating a lot of if anyone focused on the past couple months, PCEF has mentioned a lot in the news, and we have a lot of different pieces that drop in the news, whether it's radio, TV, and it's different projects that are now starting to just pop up. And in our newsletter earlier this week, we spotlighted a few of the projects that we have had a direct hand in showcasing, focused on like Tryon Creek, Sunday Parkways, some of our repair grant work. So, but our weekly aggregator is just something we can include the committee on and just share that out as a means to making sure you all are getting sort of all the various hits that relate to PCEF, because we certainly get a lot of it, but we're trying to figure out how do we do that better. So that's just something I wanted to name and acknowledge, while obviously there's a larger body of work to do to continue to figure out how do we surface and consolidate a lot of these news stories. So I think that's my update before we move on. I want to just pause here, see if anyone has any questions about any of these. Otherwise.
Meg?
Hi, me again. This is something I care about. So thanks, Sam. I really appreciate the updates and like some really exciting stuff about, I saw Mazarine commented in the chat, totally fabulous news about PCEF being ahead of schedule on the air conditioners and before we've had a really big heat wave this summer. So that's great news. And just all the program updates you were mentioning are really exciting. And you mentioned the newsletter. And so that's another thing that for all of us PCEF committee members and advocates to be a go-to place to find resources. So I'll just offer like those couple sentences I was going to say about the tree canopy tour. And then I do have a question or like more of a discussion topic, I guess. Oh, and I should say I'm also excited about the 82nd Avenue street tour. Like I think that in-person visitation is really impactful. And that is what I got to do on my tree tour, you all. So I shared the Flickr album photos that were taken by some of PCEF communication staff. I think Elizabeth was there taking photos. And the short of it is I got to go on a tour with mainly Portland urban forestry staff, along with representatives of some nonprofits and contractors who are involved in PCEF funded planting programs. So like Friends of Trees, various contractors were there. And then representatives on the Equitable Tree Canopy Advisory Committee. I might have that name a little bit wrong, but something like that, of which I'm like the PCEF chair committee rep on. And anyway, we did a tour around North Portland and saw a bunch of street trees and yard trees, and most of them within the first 5 years of establishment. We actually got to be there while there was a watering truck, like a PCEF funded contractor there with their watering truck. Evidence of our commitment to maintain trees for 5 years. And we talked about trees needing pruning before the end of the 5th year, because that's the most efficient time to prune them. And we saw trees just in all ages of establishment. And I just feel optimistic that North Portland will get to have a more robust tree canopy. And it's been a lower tree canopy neighborhood in the last 10 years. So it was a great tour. And to fellow committee members, I hope you all get to get out on a tour of relevance to your kind of focus area on the committee. So yeah, that's just my recap. I also saw in the newsletter like the Tyrone Creek really exciting, and the DPAVE project. All were exciting to me as the regenerative ag and green infrastructure voice on the committee. So that's kind of my update. And then Sam, you were, after all your comments, you asked if there are questions, and mine's maybe just it'd be good committee members to hear from you or to hear from staff or others. Just there it seems to be some sense out there that we're not promoting our good work enough, despite all the efforts PCEF staff have put into those posts. There is this upcoming tour on 82nd Avenue. I talked to Sam about like, does it make sense for for elected officials to be there? Would committee members be there? But I'm just curious if other committee members have ideas, thoughts, or questions around spreading the good news of PCEF or engaging a broader community and hearing about it. I'd love to hear from you all.
Yes.
Yeah, Robin, I know this is of interest to you.
Yeah, I'm not a comms person, so I don't know what the best way means is, but I wholly soulfully, whatever, advocate for this. We need more publicity.
I echo that same sentiment, and I'm thinking, anything involving communications takes more than one impression in one channel. So we need to be able to, consider this comprehensively. Like, do we have a web landing page where community can go, and others who are interested can go and, be able to look at all the different activities, but then also other channels to promote this. And again, I don't know what we've already done, so I don't want to assume that we haven't done a really comprehensive job, but to, know that committee members can also amplify that great work by sharing. If there are social media posts, that can reach our audiences as well, I think that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I would love for us to maybe convene a smaller group of us that are really interested in how we can promote all the great work that PCEF is doing.
Thanks, Tracy. Ranfees.
Yeah, just appreciate the updates on this, and I think appreciate Meg, your question on this for this discussion. I think there's I think it's always a delicate balance between what is our role here for the committee and what's the role for staff. But I think for any good program, I think the board of the committee is we have many roles. Our role here is to be stewards of the program, be on the 50,000-foot view. But at the same time, I think it's important as being good stewards of the program, knowing what's happening on the ground. I think we all have our own networks. We have our neighbors, friends, family, folks who are asking us questions about PCEF every day. So I think it is important to find ways where we can be those cheerleaders on the side. So Sam, I'll defer to you and your team, like how you think about this, but anything that, we would love to be just an extension of sharing and resharing the tweets and posts. And I think that's just I think again, it's just, I think probably a future discussion, maybe in the retreat format, like how do we proactively share and tell the narrative, the story. Further, I just, would say, I think going beyond this question, as this program grows and as we see different programs moving forward, it will be very difficult for this group, this committee to know what's going on in each and every one of these programs, just because we've created a culture of moving away from being in the weeds. So, I think it's just a future discussion for this committee, 50,000 foot in the weeds. There's pros and minuses for every side, but it's great to hear about the contractor in this meeting. But I think we all know the potential risks is when things do go south and they do go bad, or if we're not, celebrating the victories as well. There will be a bit of a disconnect between the committee and the program as it's being rolled out. So I think those are just things to balance, but I think those are the learning curves for any new program being uplifted.
Thank you, Ranfees. Robin.
Yeah, so I have a lot to say, but I know I don't have time, so I'll try to keep it short. I think, one, I agree with Ranfees. I think, it's not our role to dictate how this PR is to be done, other than that there is a need. I have a challenge communicating the successes of PCEF to folks beyond the one or two or three kind of stories that I'm personally familiar with, and I'd love to be able to have more talking points. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I also think we just got to acknowledge that PCEF has often been derided, if that's the right word, in the press, and for whatever reason. And as Ramsey said, we need to celebrate the victories. We need to tell people the success stories, and not just the facts, but I'd love to hear the personal stories, right? We can go on a bus tour on 82nd and be nice, but how does that impact people, citizens of Portland? How does the depave work? How does that affect the community that the depaving happened? Those are, I think, the stories that really resonate with people. So I'll stop there, but I can talk much longer about this, even though I'm not a comms person.
Thank you so much, Robin. Any other comment? Because we do want to move on.
What I will say, folks, and I appreciate this, is one, certainly the human stories are very much core to the way that we certainly want to tell the stories. That is essential to what PCEF is about. It's not just about the numbers and the emissions reductions. It is about the people. So that's something that we're constantly working with some of our consultants and whatnot. And I think as part of this broader effort that you all are seeing as the city sort of reorganizes, as the city centralizes different functions, including centralizing communications, we're getting, in some instances, access to the broader apparatus, the broader city communications apparatus, and teasing out what it means to leverage that and what it means for us to be able to effectively leverage that. So I think I appreciate these pieces. It's always figuring out how we tell the story of something that is as complex as PCEF is. It's difficult, and at the same time, we have a lot of people that want to tell that story, and so I think that's what you're starting to see more of. And I kind of what I want to be just give it another. I always want to say give it another little 6 months, because every 6 months you just see that many more projects coming to life, and more of those stories being told, and that's what you're starting to see here. And so we'll make sure we continue to share those, and also think about just other strategies to make sure we're elevating as much as we can.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sam. Let's go on to annual CIP update process and timeline review. So next slide, please. Thank you.
All right. Well, this is probably, I've only got really, I think, one, maybe two slides here. This is largely a discussion with you all, where later on in this agenda we're gonna talk about the evaluation subcommittee and get a couple of folks on board to jump into the process. But what we want to have here is just, as we get into this, and as the team here on our side and the staff side start to dive and pour through each of our programs and figure out the different information, we want to hear from you in terms of what is really important for you to understand as we build this process out for this first year with you all. And so that's just the context here is really, this is our first annual update process. We've got 37 strategic programs plus our community grants. We'll have one round of community grants that we just awarded recently, and we'll be able to talk through how many of the grants have we executed, where are they? But surprise, surprise, unless we go back to the 2022 efforts, we really just got one round here related to this current climate investment plan. So we're going to have to figure out how do we make sense of each of those 37 programs, where are there reasonable metrics to get into, and so forth. And that just means we're going to need to test what is the available program data to get into this. And I just kind of put this diagram here, and Rachel and we're talking through this, and we keep refining each time how we're going to go through this. But largely, I suspect you're going to have sort of a targeted review on programs that are spinning up. They've got data, they've allocated funding, they've gotten underway, we've got many projects under completion. There's really going to be only a handful of programs that fit that mold. Then you're going to have many programs where they're in process. What that means is, as you just heard me share, about 5, 6 different strategic programs, we're somewhere in the contracting process, or we've awarded a contract to an administrator, we've begun implementation. We'll speak to where we are in those phases, and we'll be able to have both anecdotal information on things that we need to change, but we'll have context. And then there are going to be programs that have been delayed starts, programs that we always anticipated were going to take a while to get off the ground for one reason or another, just because of sheer capacity. How many programs can we turn on at once? And so we'll have those, and there'll be probably a discussion there around where those programs have been delayed start. Where are we in that journey? Do we still see the same value in those? Are those ripe for a discussion on whether there are alternative ways to think about those? But even going through all of that, a lot of that work is ultimately going to happen at the subcommittee level. And so I think there's just questions around, we expect to have those more intimate conversations with the subcommittee. We expect to provide briefings to you all in smaller groups, and then ultimately briefings to you all and the broader public in our broader public meetings for the full committee. And really just teasing out was, as you step back, as you hear the information as the full committee, the kind of information discussion process and criteria, because we're gonna need to kind of find criteria that are able to accommodate the range of the review that's going to need to happen across 37 programs that we're going to talk about, plus our community grants. So I think I'll share that, and then largely just a reminder that this is really our first full fiscal year after the passage of the climate investment plan. First full fiscal year that we've got here that we're closing out, that we're getting into. So we're going to have a lot of robust information and data, but there's also, for many of the programs, you're not going to have a really, you're going to be at a better place to judge them and have a more significant realignment opportunity in the fall of 2026 when we have 2 years of data and more information. So you've got essentially one round where this year we've given you a sense for what went wrong, what went well, where have there been delays, what are things do we want to change that we wanted to change. And next year you'll have a better sense because we'll have, forecasted into the future, what do we expect for the next year, and you'll be able to gauge us on that and have what we expect to bring in a more significant realignment opportunity in fall of 26. So I think that's just turning really back to the group here in terms of, are there specific performance data areas that this group is interested in? Are there considerations that this committee wants to elevate as we build this process in real time with the group? And this discussion can go as long as it needs to, or it can be short, but I think that's largely it. And what we expect timeline-wise is once you all this evening make a point, the subcommittee members, we're going to begin calendaring and hope to have at least 2 meetings in July, but likely the second meeting getting into a regular cadence where we find a recurring meeting time so that we're meeting about every other week, all the way through what we expect is going to be about like early November, where that's probably the last of the meetings. Through that time, briefing the committee with an expectation that at early November, the subcommittee is really reviewing the full package of materials that's going to be that the full committee will review. That will ultimately be something that we hope the full committee decides to recommend to the city council so that they take up deliberation in December ahead of the real start to the budget process that kicks off next year.
Were you just talking, Sam, about, sorry, I don't know if you were calling on me. I was probably supposed to wait for Dr. Moses. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was on you. Right ahead. Jump in. Totally fine.
Were you just talking about subcommittees meeting biweekly, or you want the full committee to meet biweekly until November?
Subcommittees.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Full committee, what we will continue to do is have a monthly meeting. And then what we'll make sure we do is just continue the small group meetings prior to the monthly meeting to give folks a preview of the agenda, have an opportunity to ask questions, so that way you can get a little bit into the weeds and smaller group opportunities. So there'll still be that two meetings a month, but the small groups, as you know, are always optional to make sure that you all feel as prepared as you need to be for the full committee meetings. But expectation is the bulk of the work happens in subcommittee, and it's what would you want to know full committee level as we do that and as we build this and build the framework for this.
Meg, thank you.
Yeah, in response to your question, Sam, I mean, it's exciting to move into this. And one reaction I have is that I think the review of community grants is going to look a lot different than the review of strategic programs. I mean, it's just a very different amount of money often, and then they're just really so I would expect those would be different. You didn't comment on that, so that's just a question generally. But as for the question one, specific performance data areas, I mean, there's the obvious ones of like you already mentioned, like did the program or the grant get executed in the way that it was envisioned, if like was pretty closely, or why not? Like what were the barriers, or like what what went awry or what had to be navigated, et cetera. And then of course we have our like metrics over on the dashboard. So those are always good ones to stay aligned with. The main ones being climate impact, you know, GHG emission reductions and or resilience benefits, and then benefit to priority communities. So those are obvious ones to me. But then beyond that, I think where PCEF, and I say this particularly thinking a lot about the regenerative ag and green infrastructure area, because it's the one I think about the most. And, you know, a huge difference of PCEF from other climate programs is we really have projects that have multiple benefits to community. In the regenerative ag, it's promoting food sovereignty and cultural strength and community connections and anti-hunger and, you know, beautification of neighborhoods. So I think that's a really big thing I'd want to know about. And I don't know how possible it is partially into projects, but I know they answer a question about that in their application. So to me, that's a thing that stands out for PCEF a little bit differently than others. So I wouldn't want only the greenhouse gas emissions reductions. And I do want the PCEF priority population benefits, like how many people, who are a little bit about their demographics, and then also like what is the impact they're getting? Like, is it cost savings or more trees in their neighborhood, that kind of thing. But those seem more like end game results, but I guess I would want to know that projects are kind of on track to get to those end game results. And then the considerations, I mean, I think I kind of folded that in there, that some parallel process for the community grants and strategic programs that makes sense for both, and just an elevation of the multiple benefits.
If I can even just, Dr. Moses, chime in and respond so I don't forget the thread.
Yeah.
I think absolutely community, the way we evaluate the community grants, I mean, it's in the context of the climate investment plan. It's 5-year, 5 community grant cycles that are anticipated there. We've just completed our first one of the climate investment plan. And so there's a question of to what extent we want to go back and look at the prior cycles, right? But within this climate investment plan, we're just wrapping up. Fortunately, the last set of awards were made in, I got it right, September of 2024 is when we're now just finally executing the last of the agreements from that cycle. I think we made about 75 awards out of that cycle. And so you're not going to have that much information, but we're going to give you how many awards did we make? How many awards did we cancel? How many awards, what was the timeline to execution? How many advances have we? So you'll get some cursor. We'll pull the information to give you all a flavor. We can even backcast to the community grants prior to the climate investment plan, so you have a sense. But I can acknowledge each time we keep tightening up our processes, and now we're getting into our 4th round here, and we feel much more confident in the process we're running, so that as we get to award, how quickly do we get to execution? How quickly do we get programs moving? So that we're just tightening everything up. So I think there's going to be, with the community grants, we're going to be looking at probably an aggregate that way. Although, yes, we do have outcomes related to individual grants. It's just always given the scale of community grants and 37 programs, we're going to have to be measured in how deep we dive and which ones are going to be worth diving in deeper. So certainly hear you there, and that'll be just making sure we're speaking to the benefits is absolutely key to each of the programs beyond the emissions reductions too.
Yeah, and just responding, you said something about grant cancellations and that specific topic. I would love to know, not just the number, but have some insight into like why. Like, is it because the grantee wasn't doing something, or was it city side? Like, I would definitely want to know if there's city stuff. So, a little bit of the why behind them all.
Right, absolutely. So I think we can spend some time on that. But that'll be, and what that'll help you do. And I think when we talk about community grants is what we want to start to do as we get to this round, and particularly next round next year, fall of 2026, is you kind of have a sense for, okay, here's the volume of interest, here are the volume of applications we got, here are the awards that we made, here is our timeline to execution, here are the types of projects that lingered in terms of timeline to execution, so that we start to craft a better picture in our minds that as we refine each round of our grant making process, are we getting closer to we're getting folks when they're ready to be granted the resources, they're able to get through our process, get to the other side. I mean, and that is a two-way street in terms of us as much as possible tightening up, simplifying our processes, but also making sure we've structured things so that community shows up at the right place. Should they show up and get a mini grant instead, or start with a planning grant? So there's a lot of that we're going to need to figure out with you all together. How do we make sense of all that information?
Thank you so much. Faith, I saw that your hand was up.
Okay, I'll make a really quick comment and then go to Renfees. I'm thinking about, actually, Renfees, perfect that you raised your hand, because I was thinking about the comment you made earlier around the 50,000 foot level and in the weeds, and I was wondering how we were in both places. So I was sitting with that kind of, juxtaposition. And I do think that for the full committee, we really do need to be at that 50,000 foot level. That the committee itself is our ambassadors for the community, and ambassadors for the success of the impacts of the program that we all said it, that the public, that the Portlanders asked for. So I think what we need to know as a full committee level, what are we learning? What do we need to know to be effective ambassadors for successes and failures? Like, where are the risks to the program? And that, so I'm, again, just taking it back to that 50,000 foot level. I think a subcommittee needs to know a lot more about the intricacies between programs, between projects, what's failing, what's succeeding, where are there possibilities for shifting funds, things like that. But as a full committee level, I think it's most important that we stay at the level of thinking of ourselves as ambassadors for the success of the program, for the success of staff, but mostly for the success of the impacts that we were all put in this position to drive in the community. I don't know, that's not specific, but it just puts us at a different level, I think.
That's really good guidance. Thank you so much, Faith. Ranfees, the telescoping, the 50,000 foot in details. Yes.
Yeah, I just appreciate your questions there, Faith. And yeah, I think maybe just to dumb down the questions, it's what do we need to know and why do we need to know it? And I think that's a balance and a trade-off. And I think I think for me, I think a important guiding North Star here is, ensuring that the program is living to the mission, the values, and the principles that we've laid out. And I think that's really important. And, I think when we talk about a community-driven process, what does that look like? Are we ensuring that's out there? And how do we strike a balance between staff who administers this program, community members who have important experience is not just going to be captured in the quantitative data. There, I think we've got to consider what qualitative inputs could be, and just know that those two things may not be available for us. But again, I think it's just more of an open-ended question for us as we get into potential summer mode and go into some of these subgroups. It's like, what do we need to know and why? And I hope we can answer the why first before getting to the what do we need to know. Just because I think it'll help us as an exercise to do this. Like, so for example, I very much care about workforce and workforce issues. But I know here in this table, we're not, it won't be very, helpful for us to get into the weeds on workforce. But I do know that there would be a really great venue for folks to dig into workforce data, such as like the High Road Advisory Committee, if that becomes an important role. And for us as a committee to know that that is a role that's being played, alleviates a lot of and helps decompress all the things we need to cover in a full committee meeting here. So again, so I'm just using that example. Don't want to get too in the weeds. What is important, why is important. But lastly, I do want to say another thing that's I think really important that may not fit in this agenda, but I do think that we should play a role here that will help strike a balance between staff and the community at large who's applying, and just ensuring that we're ensuring transparency around things like, the grant proposal. What is the scoring rubric? Making sure that we play a role on that, shedding light on who are the prospective reviewers for these applications. And then when it comes for the data, like ultimately gonna have to rely on staff for a lot of information. So anyway, I digress. But I appreciate the questions and conversations, and I agree with the questions, Faith, that you've raised.
Thank you, Renfees. I'd love to ask a question in the sense of the data that you would be collecting informs what? How the program goes forward? Who gets funded next? Kind of, yeah.
So what I can say, what we expect to come with is, I can say with certainty, we have at least one, possibly two programs that probably going to ask for additional resources, and we're going to have to figure out how do we get there, if that's a value, right? I mean, there's at least one program here that's nearly fully allocated, and generally it's been, I mean, not to hide the ball here, it's our programming focus on affordable housing. And so that will be one place where we start the conversation and we say, this is where we're at. This is how we've done this. This is the information we have. This is where, I mean, and it isn't all roses. It is as a function of we're still tightening up all the pieces, but you'll have a sense for all the units, all the number of heat pumps that we've installed, all the higher insulation solar panels that we've done on those units, and then there will, and yet in order to do that, in order to have that conversation and say that we need more resources here. So we have a sense for some of those. We need to be able to structure the conversation on all the others so that you can appropriately review those, knowing that we don't have perfect information, full information, but we have information. We've got our experiences, and we want to make sure that we can be as both, obviously, as tie that back to what it was in the climate investment plan, but acknowledge where each of those programs are. And this as a whole team is just a function. I think about when we get to like the third climate investment plan. We've done this several times. How dialed in we will be and have a good sense for where any given program should be at a given time, when it doesn't necessarily have the same ramp up timing, because we're not turning on 37 programs at one time, or however many, we're turning on one time. So I think obviously that's not the case. Many of these are city programs that have already been going, but I think that we have to deal with what we have now, and that's the process that we want to walk through as we go through each of the strategic programs, each of the community grants, and share the information we do have, and try to create a structure, a process, a set of criteria that, or a framework we can use to evaluate each of them.
Thank you so much, Sam. I really appreciate that. Renfees?
Yeah, I want to sort of jump on workforce, and as that gets into a future, like I would hope, like, just to use this as a thought experiment, for me, like the goal of the workforce is, how do you create career pathways into family wage jobs for our priority populations, right? So however we define that, that becomes sort of the North Star. We could have a bunch of outputs, inputs on the data, but the data, I would really want to rely on, subject matter experts helping advise, the committee, like how would what are important measures to seeing that, knowing that each, we're really finding a lot of different things in workforce that would be really important to measure the data. But for me, like getting people enrolled in a program, that's one thing. Getting people on the jobs, another thing. We know statistically, like retention in clean energy jobs for women and BIPOC workers is a huge challenge and barrier. And so I think over time, like I think this committee, I just can't imagine how well we will get into the weeds on that. But I would hope, not to steer you in this direction, Sam or team, but like I would hope the higher, like a body like the higher advisory committee could be like, hey, look, year one or year two, or second iteration or third iteration of the climate investment plan, here's what we learned. We don't need to create 100 different programs. Like we already know which ones are the high performing programs. Here's where we can invest things. Or hey, we don't need to invest 100 million in workforce, just throwing out a number. We just need to use the existing programs and really require them from the employers. Like again, I would not that's not a recommendation here. I'm just saying, I would hope that that would be the North Star. Like we want to create, move the needle on retaining diverse workers or priority populations in these jobs. And then we use data to help assess that, but we really do need subject matter experts to help inform and sort of help us assess, because I think data alone without subject matter experts will be really difficult to guide us as a committee. And so, I just think about every different category. We're just going to really rely on folks beyond this committee and folks beyond the staff to help guide us as well. So, sorry, I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's how I'm thinking of it. Like, going back to your question there, Faith, like there's a lot to grapple with from a 50,000-foot view, but if we stay at the 50,000 view, like, that does require us to say, hey, staff, how are you working with subject matter experts in these areas? Here's the data, great, but what are you taking away from this as staff? But also, what are other subject matter experts on the ground, independent from staff, saying about this? So
Thank you.
I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
Sure does. Thank you. Sam?
Yep, I'm referencing makes sense. I'll say it makes sense. And the unsatisfying part, and this has been the same with the Higher Ed Advisory Council, is just getting to the information that can get us to that place to have that. And I think my certainly biggest appreciation or realization, or whatever you want to call it in this, is getting to the other side where you've got good information to take that evaluative stance, that it's not just how are each of these outputs going, but getting to the other side of how did this all together work. It takes a minute, and we certainly have that in different programs, but it's the aggregate view is going to be the key thing of collectively, is this ecosystem working. So I think that is firmly our aspiration. We're gonna, this year, what's the pieces that we start to try to get there? That signal, are we at least, are we heading towards that North Star?
Beautiful. Sam, do you have any additional slides on this topic?
Sometimes I have to jump ahead to see if we do. No.
Okay. All right. So yes, let's take a break and reconvene at 7:10.
Thank you, Dr. Moses.
7-minute break. Thank you so much. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you, thank you. Rachel, do you mind the next slide, please? Evaluation Subcommittee Appointment Action Item. Sam.
Let me see if I have another slide here. Sometimes I don't. Okay. So, all right, y'all. So I think this is just following up on the discussion. We need a few, two, maybe three folks to join the evaluation subcommittee. Really, this in earnest, like we said, we're gonna, as soon as we come out of this meeting, Wendy on our team will follow up to start scheduling a recurring meeting end of July. We'll try to find probably an ad hoc meeting just separate out of that earlier in July, so we can just get some orientation of how we want to do this and work on this together. So that's the primary ask through November 25, every other meetings, and you all know the evaluation ask. Folks that are going to be working close with this and asking questions and diving. Let me think if there's anything else before I turn it to the group to see if there are any questions. Oh, and just as a reminder, everyone, this is part of engaging in this new system and the new form of government we have here. But we used to be able to request things and get them on the council agenda like that. So unfortunately, you all recommended your new folks, Andre Lightsey Walker, as well as Anna Allen. They're going to be heading before the Climate Committee on July 24th. We expect them likely to be heard on the city council agenda the week afterwards, just generally the sequence if things go well. And so they'd be on in August. And so we know that there's likely probably going to be some interest for them to do a deep dive and potentially engage in this group as well as newcomers to get their feet wet and try to understand this work. So that's just what I wanted to name here as we think about just committee members and the body of work you all have ahead of you and how you want to plug in.
How many did you say you're looking for, Sam?
2, 3 if we're lucky. And I want in the 3 I want to acknowledge that I have a good sense that at least one of the new folks coming in is going to be interested in participating, but that I think once we get to 9 members, you can have up to 4 folks on the subcommittee. I think I don't think that that's a limitation either way, even with the body as it is now. So, but certainly at least 2.
D'Angelo, welcome in.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I would definitely love to volunteer for the subcommittee. I think it's a great opportunity to really fall in line with how we see these programs moving forward. Having been on a couple of evaluations previously for programs that we've rolled out, I think it's just another way. And I love that Ramphis said what he said about the 50,000-foot view and in the weeds, because it's so relevant to how we navigate this program. But this one, it seems like one of those things that's more in the weeds. And for me, I think that would be great to see that and be able to communicate that with community members that often approach me about, how does PCEF roll forward? Like, what are the wins? What are the losses? What are the successes, the failures, so on and so on. But anyways, just thinking about the future of this program and how we both protect it and reinforce it.
Beautiful, D'Angelo. Thank you. Anyone else want to step up for subcommittee appointment? Or any questions? Robin?
Yeah, I'm happy to step in. I think I have the time and yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a loss of words today. I'm a little bit under the weather right now. But yeah, just always looking for ways to improve the work that we all do and get feedback. So I'd be happy to serve.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Sam?
I think unless there's anyone else, I think we just need an action item here, unless there are questions for us here or me here on this side of it. Move to the next agenda item. Have one more after that, and then
All
the
right.
evening is back to you all.
May I have a motion to accept Robin and D'Angelo onto the subcommittee, evaluation subcommittee?
I move that we accept D'Angelo and Robin.
Thank you, Tracy. May I have a second?
Second.
Beautiful. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you so much, Meg.
Oh, my hand was up just to
Oh,
support
to
that
support.
nomination.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you. All right, Sam.
Okay. And we will share times and dates. The difference is we schedule around the people that say they're in. So it's not to say that you can't be. We just got to manage for quorum. So let us know, and we can come back and revisit this one. All right. Next up, y'all, is the co-chairs. So one, I'll just say it has been an incredibly wild ride these past few years. And I want to thank, obviously, certainly before Megan and Ramfis, Michael and Maria. But Megan, you have been in the hot seat for quite a while. And I know without a doubt, we've had a lot of conversations as we try to navigate this thing. So same goes to you, Ramfis. No shortage of a lot of challenging conversations, a lot of how do we figure this out and move through these moments as the work that we do is both highly political, highly challenging, and means a tremendous amount to everyone here on this group as well as the community. So I appreciate you both. And now we have this moment of a changing of the guard. And so I've got a slide here because I just brought it from last time. It's a reminder for folks around what the co-chair responsibilities entails in terms of just helping manage the committee meetings, making sure committee members are heard, building consensus, speaking on behalf of the committee, helping develop agendas, and then all the other extras that you get called in for, which tends to, I think it was one thing when we had 5 council members, now we have 12. So I think hopefully, our primary body being the climate committee, which is 5 for everyone. So meaning engaging also with the climate committee and city council, at times the mayor and others. And then engaging with media as media have questions. And so it's always been nice to have 2 folks. So there's a divide and conquer. And I know that Meg, you and Ramfis have so faithfully shown up in all the ways you've needed to. So I think you've got Meg and Ramfis here to ask questions about it, but I think this is the ask. We'll come back to this. This is a nice timing because we're right at the fiscal year. So it'll hopefully get us on a cadence of checking in each fiscal year. But that's both the task here, and then I'll turn it back to you all unless you have questions for me.
Any questions? All right, so any people, are we asking for people who are interested in voting them in? Is that the process that we're trying to do this evening?
Or any nominations? Or any which.
Very good. Thank you so much. Faith.
I would like to first just thank Meg and Ramfis, who both just disappeared off my screen somehow. But I just want to thank you so much for shepherding us through this really chaotic time with council and always being available and reaching out, even when I didn't reach back out to you. Thank you for reaching out to me. I really did feel connected. So appreciate that so much. And I also want to make a nomination also for our next guard. And I would love to nominate D'Angelo, if you are willing, to play in this role. I think he would be amazing in this capacity, and I would love to see you in that city. So if you're willing to step up, I would love to see you in this role.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the nomination. I would be more than happy to serve. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Meg.
Yeah, that's exciting, D'Angelo. And I appreciate having been co-chair with Ramfis for a while now, maybe 2+ years. And it's been an exciting journey. And I think we're very strong. We're in a strong position right now. We've made it through a interesting budget time, and we have a lot of city councilors who really care a lot about PCEF, and we have a community and a lot of great projects on the ground. So I think it'll be a great time for new co-chairs to step in. And a little note, you're not losing me. I stay on the committee for a few more years, And I probably would be interested in also serving on the evaluation subcommittee, but I was waiting for other people to sort out. So if a third is needed, I could do that. I'd be happy to. I feel like like Robin said, it would be a great way to kind of be in the weeds in the programs. So with that aside, I want to nominate Tracy as co-chair. Tracy, I really appreciated your perspective on the committee. You bring a nice, even, balanced, thoughtful perspective to all the committee work, and certainly you have a lot of technical expertise in the things PCEF does, and I think you'd be a great co-chair. So hopefully you're willing to try it out.
Well, thank you so much, Megan. First of all, I want to say thank you to you and Rampies for your leadership. I know I haven't been on the committee very, very long, but I've been absolutely impressed with the level of leadership you both have provided the committee. With that said, absolutely, I would absolutely enjoy representing the committee and being the co-chair. So thank you so much for the nomination.
Wonderful. All right. I think we have our two fantastic volunteers. We've got a great slate here. So I would love to have a motion to have D'Angelo and Tracy be our co-chairs for the next year. I have a motion.
I move.
Robin, and may I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Yes, wonderful. Congratulations. Thank you so very, very much. Oh, how fantastic.
Okay,
It's going to
thank
be
you.
so exciting. Sam?
So we're due for a little. We're probably due for a little celebration. So we'll figure something out here now that the weather is nice. To just acknowledge both. Well, there's a lot of celebration. So we'll come back to that. Thank you all. What we will do is we'll follow up here tomorrow to start scheduling meetings. And I know that Meg Ramphis and now Tracy D'Angelo will follow up here. I know that we'll follow up at least to have one meeting with the mayor's office as part of just that handoff, as I know that they wanted to have that meeting. So we'll make sure we get those teed up. All right. Well, then last thing here, working agreement update. So this is a technical thing, and that's what I didn't share much before this, but as you all recall, when we had our audit in early 2022, there were about 6 audit recommendations that the city auditor's office made. And one of the audit recommendations, if I recall, is audit recommendation number 4, was focused on evaluating the oversight responsibilities and ultimately seeking input from city council on changes for the committee to make sure there's just clarity in terms of how the committee worked and appropriate duties and responsibilities. Well, as part of responding to that audit, we did a series of things, many of which were captured in our October 2022 code amendment to clarify roles. We then subsequently updated the committee bylaws, and in August 2023 also updated the committee's working agreements to capture all of those pieces. With the auditor's office, every year or so, we check in to see what is our progress on those recommendations. I'm happy to say that out of the 6 recommendations, 4 of them have been implemented. Now, one recommendation will be implemented when we publish our annual report this fall. And then the last recommendation, which is like a hanging chat out there, with the fact that when we updated the working agreements, there's this language here, it still references and as part of the core purpose of the working agreements, talks about the PCEF committee, implementing grant funding processes. And while you all provide direction through the climate investment plan priorities, you don't implement grant funding processes anymore directly. And so we're gonna screen the working agreements to see if there's anything else, but this was sort of a hanging chad that the auditor's office got and felt like it wasn't clear. And so we're gonna bring this up in the next committee meeting. We'll share commentary beforehand. We don't know that this warranted convening a subcommittee for this, but we'll bring this with some recommendations from us or your July subcommittee to update the working agreements and bring it in line. So ideally we can check that box off and get to 5 out of 6 audit recommendations implemented. And then later this fall, we'll have implemented all of the audit recommendations once we publish our annual report. So that's it. Just a heads up, just trying to make sure we do our part, making sure we tie up all our loose ends here.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Faith, thank you for that. Yeah.
It's been a marathon to hit those recommendations, but thank you. Well,
right. Go right ahead.
No, back to you, Dr. Moses.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our meeting today. Thank you, everyone, for your participation, for your kudos to all the hard work that you're doing. And I would like to adjourn this meeting at 7:25. Faith, I'll see you tomorrow. Or I'm sorry, Tracy, I'll see you tomorrow. Very good. Thank you, everyone.
Great meeting you all, and congrats, new co-chair.